The Chinese Communist government has endorsed Mark Carney to be Prime Minister of Canada. Donald Trump has endorsed Mark Carney to be Prime Minister of Canada. Davos has endorsed Mark Carney to be Prime Minister of Canada. It makes Canadians wonder, will we ever have a Canadian who's putting Canada first as Prime Minister of Canada? Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. Canada has a panel. They're called Security and Intelligence Threats to Elections, SITE for short. These people are tasked with monitoring all of the various websites to see if there's any foreign interference in our elections. Of course, there is foreign interference in every election. What we need to be doing is not trying to identify it. We need to be minimizing it. But I'll get into that in a second. Today, these guys released a report saying that they have discovered that the Chinese platform WeChat has been endorsing Mark Carney. Now, they're using the word targeting because they are trying to influence the election, right? They're using the word targeting because they want you to think that it's not an endorsement, that somehow Mark Carney is under attack. The guy that borrowed $250 million from the Chinese government just a couple of months ago. These are the people that are charged with you understanding whether or not our elections are safe. The double standard, the hypocrisy is just so absurd. I don't understand how any of these government officials get their jobs. I certainly don't understand how they keep their jobs. I suppose I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's listen to what they have to say.
Are aware of an information operation targeting the 45th general election on the social media platform WeChat. The information operation was launched by Yoli Yomien, WeChat's most popular news account. Intelligence reporting links the Yoli Yomien account to the PRC, Chinese Communist Party's Central Political and Legal Affairs Commission.
The lady begins by saying how the Chinese government and this WeChat are connected, and the most popular news program on this platform is also connected to the Chinese government. And she lists a couple of branches, which are essentially the propaganda arm or the security arm. There's one party in China. It's the Communist Party. It's a cult of personality. It is a absolute authoritarian. There's nothing, no business, no media especially, that is not strictly regulated and controlled. And you can hear Mark Carney talk about that when he talks about how he wants to have all of the houses built by the same six guys. When he mentions how he wants to make government and industry tied together, because that's the model of Marxism. That's the model of 1930s Germany. That's the model of 1970s USSR. That's the model of 2025 China. Government controls all, including anything that goes out into the real world.
This content has been amplified in a coordinated and inauthentic way. This information operation had contrasting positive and negative narratives, first amplifying Mr. Carney's stance with the United States, and then targeting his experience and credentials. The SITE task force assesses that the foreign state-backed information operation was intended to influence Canadian Chinese communities and look to mold perceptions about the candidate. The campaign received high levels of user engagement and views, between 85,000 and 130,000 interactions, and an estimate of 1 to 3 million views.
When she says that the posts were amplified in an unregular way, what she really should say is that it doesn't look natural. It was spread too fast. It was spread by too many accounts all at the same time. That's because it was put into the system and the algorithm did the rest. Just like the Liberal government does when they take C18 and turn your content down so that they can turn CBC's content up. It's the exact same thing, because that's what they do in the Marxist countries and the authoritarian countries. And of course, the Liberal government is doing it as well under Bill C18 and Bill C11 to some extent. Then she goes on to say that it only saw 85,000 people. Now imagine, 85,000 people interacted with it. So that's like you open up and all of a sudden it says that you got 85,000 likes or you got 85,000 comments. And it was viewed by 1 to 3 million people. She doesn't even know how many millions, because that's a huge gap. 1 to 3 million. This isn't 1 to 3,000. This 1 to 3 million. The number, the gap, what? Basically, you might as well just say it's been seen by millions of people, and we're not sure how far it went, but we want to stand up here and pretend like we know what we're talking about so that we can, prove that we deserve these ridiculous paychecks and that we can write off our lunch on the Canadian taxpayer.
The activity saw large spikes of what is believed to be coordinated inauthentic behavior on March 10th and 25th, 2025. Panel has determined that this is not affecting Canada's ability to have a free and fair election. This case is contained to one platform and has not spread further, nor is it affecting Canadians' abilities to make informed decisions about their vote.
First, let me address something that I forgot to mention. When the girl says that the news platform from China says good things and bad things about Mark Carney, that's a smokescreen, a red herring to make you believe that they're being impartial, to make anyone who's looking think that it's just being the way journalism is supposed to be, the way journalism like Generation X understands it. It's just down the road. There's no opinions. There's no editorials. There's no political bias. There's none of that stuff. It's just the facts, and you can make up your own decision. Now, any of you that are of a younger generation, you have never seen that except for in the independent media. The corporate media is bought and sold, and they're pushing the narrative. In this case, you have to understand that WeChat, CTV, CBC, Global are all speaking in harmony. So when the individual puts down their phone and turns on CTV, news to hear what the Canadian news is, well, they're also saying the exact same things. So they're all working together, these globalists, to try and get people to vote for Mark Carney so that they can impose upon Canadians some of the most authoritarian and totalitarian moves in the history of the country. Then this individual goes on to say how they have determined that it's not having any influence on the Canadian election, despite the fact that it's only reinforcing what they're hearing on CTV and CBC. So it's okay, don't worry about it, it's just one platform, she says. Okay, you say it's just one platform that has reached millions of people, that comes from across the world, talking from a communist perspective of an authoritarian country that puts people in re-education camps. And yet the platform of X, formerly known as Twitter, the owner of that platform simply says that he doesn't agree with the way the Germans are treating the right-wing political parties. And the entire left wing in Canada melts down saying that Twitter should be banned or X should be banned because he's trying to do influence on his platform. Nowhere in there is that post reaching hundreds of millions of people and all the things that you say that the Chinese one is doing. This is just a man making a comment. The other one was a news agency doing a whole expose on Mark Carney. But for some reason, Charlie Angus and the rest of them want X banned, and you don't think that this WeChat platform should be banned. You're not up here endorsing the removal of WeChat from the Canadian ecosystem. And then you want me to believe that you're impartial. Now, let's take all of that aside and let's just ask ourselves, it's only one, right? This is the part that's bothering me, right? It's only one. Yeah, it's reached millions of Let's take it's only one and apply it to anything else. The husband only one time, or the criminal only committed one time. Does that mean it's no big deal? Does that mean if you fill the blanks on either one of those sentences, is it wrong or is it okay because it was only once? The guy streaked in the football game just the one time. The person, insert anything in there and ask yourself, is just the one time acceptable? Elon Musk said only one time about Germany. Is that okay then? Or should we be trying to ban X? See, that's the problem with people on certain aspects of the political spectrum. You want to pick and choose what you think is okay and what isn't okay. But there's only one way to achieve true equality, and that means that any factor you can pull out or put in, any of them at all, the outcome has to be the same. So either we have to treat WeChat like a threat, or we have to ignore all threats from every platform ever, which is strange because this person's entire job is to look at websites to determine if they're a threat. Am I the only one who sees this as kind of ridiculous? Am I the only one? Have I fallen off the deep end here? Let me know down in the comments, because from where I'm standing, the contradiction in her own sentence, not only does she contradict the ideas that come forward of political interference, she contradicts her entire job by saying it's just one site, no big deal. Like somehow it's not going to happen again tomorrow. It already happened twice, and you're not even sure how far it reached. Come on now. Come on. Does that make sense to anybody? Am I the only one that thinks that this is kind of a problem? I'll tell you, though, it's not the only problem that I have with this announcement that the Chinese are trying to endorse Mark Carney or have endorsed Mark Carney. I picked this up from the Western Standard. Brookfield secured a $250 million loan from the Bank of China under Carney's oversight. I'll just take a little bit of the article. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre on Tuesday drew public attention to the report that shows Mark Carney in October, while chair of Brookfield Asset Management, brokered a deal with Chinese bankers. A month prior to Carney's trip to China, then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made him chair of the Liberals Task Force on Economic Growth. A report from The Telegraph entitled Mark Carney Meets the Chinese President Xi Jinping as China woos the West, says Carney, met with the People's Bank of China deputy director in October. 2 weeks later, Brookfield secured a $256 million loan from the Chinese state-owned bank. Then a couple of months later, he resigns his posts and tries to become leader of the Liberal Party. That all seems very suspect in my mind. The guy had this job as being chair, then he brokered a deal for $256 million, which means that his company, Brookfield Management, no matter where you lie on the particulars of like where you feel that is or isn't, owes the Chinese government $250 million. Now, if you think that the Chinese government doesn't have influence on the board, you are wrong. I would believe that one of the reasons that they got the loan is because they put a couple of Chinese people, like a couple of people tied to the Chinese government, on the board. I would willingly believe that. They sell board seats all the time in these organizations. That's how they get loans. That's how they secure funding. They do it all the time. Mark Carney doing it and then telling you that it's no big deal, that I don't know where all of my money is because for some reason he wants you to believe that it's a blind trust, like he was born with this and that he doesn't really know what they're doing. He just gets a monthly check. That he's not the guy that put together the entire portfolio and then handpicked the person that's looking after it. That's what he wants you to understand. That's what he wants you to think. That's what he wants you to believe. What do you believe? Do you believe that a man can go to China and negotiate a $256 million deal and then the Chinese don't have anything over him? They don't have something they can hold over him? That he's not compromised by those actions? Or do you believe that the Chinese would just be like, oh no, it's okay. You resigned. Don't worry about it. No big deal. If it was your $256 million, how would you be treating it? We've heard a lot of rhetoric out of the Liberal Party in recent times. They don't want to talk about the housing crisis. They don't want to talk about the food prices. They don't want to talk about inflation, which is back up over 3. They don't want to talk about the job losses. They don't want to talk about the devalued dollar. And they also don't want to talk about tariffs coming out of China against Canada. Now, Donald Trump didn't really impose any tariffs on Canada, and they made all this hoopla about him just talking about it. The Chinese government has absolutely put 100% tariffs on Canadian product. And the Liberal Party is not saying a single word, not a peep is coming out of their mouth. So now we have an endorsement for Mark Carney on their web pages. We have a $256 million loan. And we have tariffs that on the one hand, when it's coming out of the United States, which never materialized, but the threat thereof, caused Mark Carney to try and invoke the Emergencies Act, or at least threaten to. But the absolute tariffs that came out of China, he's got nothing to say, not a word. He's not calling it an attack on our way of life. He's not calling it a war. He's not calling it an emergency. He's not even mentioning it. So you might be saying, well, what tariffs are you referring to? I know it's hard for people to know because there's nobody talking about it except for the independent media, of course. I picked this up from the CBC, dated March the 7th, 2025. China announces retaliatory tariffs on some Canadian farm and food products. China announced tariffs on Canada's agriculture and food products on Saturday, retaliating against levies Ottawa introduced in October on Chinese-made EVs, steel, and aluminum products. China will apply a 100% tariff on Canadian canola oil, oil cakes, and pea imports, and a 25% duty on Canadian aquatic products and pork, the ministry said in a statement. Canada's 100% tariff on Chinese EVs and 25% levy on its aluminum and steel products seriously violates World Trade Organization rules, constitutes a typical act of protectionism, and are discriminatory measures that severely harm China's legitimate right to and interests. That's what they're going to be saying to the World Trade Organization when they try to file a claim. But we don't hear Mark Carney talking about it. I mean, the Americans put nothing, and the Chinese put a 100% tariff on one of our biggest cash crops, canola oil, and our second largest cash crop, soybeans and peas. They're calling it peas, but it's soybeans that the ones that are bothering the Canadian farmers, because they grow the canola in Alberta out west and Saskatchewan as well. They grow it actually in Saskatchewan and as well in Alberta. And in Ontario, they grow soy and chickpeas. So it's impacting two very large regions of the country, and not a word is coming out of Mark Carney. And you have to ask yourself, well, is the reason that there's not a word coming out of Mark Carney because he's been told not to talk about it by the people that he owes $250 million to? Is Mr. Let's have a trade war, I'm a big tough elbows up? Is he actually belly down when it comes to the Chinese government? I mean, I don't know, but I do see that there's no action, no reaction, no plan coming forth. I do see that the farmers in this country have been waiting for the government to do something to respond somehow. I see that the Liberal Party got all bent out of shape when it was the United States just making the threat. And yet the Chinese government has actually done it. There's no more threat. It's done. It's shredded in law. And then they added to it some wording that they're going to take before the World Trade Organization to try to justify these tariffs and to try to say that Canada has to sell Canadian, and to try and say that Canada has to sell Chinese EVs. We don't have to sell anything. In this country, we sell what we want to sell. We don't let anybody push us around, including China or the WTO or Donald Trump. But you won't see that coming out of the Liberal Party because the Liberal Party is very silent on how it's going to help both the worker and the small to medium industries in these countries. What we hear is that Mark Carney's being endorsed. Mark Carney borrowed a lot of money. Mark Carney resigned just in time to run to be leader of the party after he borrowed that money. And Mark Carney is painfully silent on Chinese tariffs on Canadian-made products, while at the same time talking up a big storm and a big tough talk with the Americans who didn't, it turns out, put any tariffs on us at all. So I think when we look at all of these factors together, and if you tell yourself that, you know what, even if, let's just say for the sake of argument, it's all just a random series of coincidences. After 10 years of the corruption of the Liberal Party, are you really willing to take a chance on your future that way? Are you really prepared to tell yourself that, well, it could be something else, so let's just try anyway? Or are you going to say to yourself, you know what? Even a whiff, even a hint is enough for me to say that this person is not qualified. This person is not what's best for Canada. This person is not looking out for my best interests. I mean, which one? You have to ask yourself, because you get one vote. And how you cast that vote could very well impact the rest of your life and all the lives of your ancestors. I'm telling you that it makes no sense one way or the other. If it's just a series of misfortunate circumstances, or whether it's all connected properly, how can you willingly take that chance after 10 years of all of the corruption that the Liberal government has brought to this country, of all of the mismanagement of our money, of all of the mismanagement of our people, of all of the lack of caring about the nation? I mean, let's not forget the term Maple MAGA is an attempt to derive people who are nationalists. And here we are talking about that maybe Mark Carney's been foreign interfered by a country that he owes hundreds of millions of dollars to, who's blatantly silent on their tariff action, and who is being endorsed by them on their websites. All I'm asking you to do is think your way through it. Just like all things on this channel, we want to think our way through it. We don't want to react. We don't want to be led astray. We don't want to cast our vote based on a feeling. We need to think our way through it. And from where I'm standing, it looks to me that even the whisper of a hint is enough to say, no, this is a bad idea. This individual is just going to give us more of the same. And it's going to make it worse because he'll have 4 years to grind us into mill dust. That's just my opinion. You can let me know what your opinion is down in the comments. I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.